So far, the economy appears to have taken the Brexit vote in its stride. I mean, the economic data we've had for the last 2 months has been pretty good, but we think over the next 6 months or so, we'll start to see the after effects of that vote come into play. And as you said, the falling pound is going to push up import prices, that will raise inflation, that will depress consumers' purchasing power. And as Brexit becomes more of a hard reality, business investment is likely to suffer because of the uncertainty around what will be the UK's future trading relationships with the EU.
I mean, if you were to try and take a snapshot, like a photograph, of business investment intentions at the moment, how strong or otherwise do they look?
Well, the surveys we see from the Bank of England, from the CBI, they've been weakening over the last few months. So we don't yet have any hard data, and we won't get that until November. So until the end of November, it's really a bit uncertain as to what the effect has been.
The collapsing pound has, by all reports, started to shake many businesses who simply can't grapple with very fast moves in a very short time span. What do you think the potential is here to completely damage confidence further if you don't get some stability coming back into sterling?
I mean, I think we should see the fall in the pound as more as a good thing in the current environment. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a potential that the UK will face trade barriers in the future, and the falling pound is a means of adjusting to that. And to the extent, if you're an exporter from the UK selling in dollars or euros, your sterling revenues are immediately going up now. They're up 20% year on year.
So too are your costs. If you're also an exporter who has costs that are derived from other countries, so there's pretty much offset if you're still bearing the cost of US dollar purchases.
I'm not sure it goes that far. If you look at the breakdown of value added in UK exports, about a quarter of the value added is imported components. So most of it is actually value added created in the UK. So there will certainly be some offset, but by no means 100%.
Isn't that one of those big averages where people say, oh, well, if you look at the average of this and the average of that, then surely it's not so bad. But if you look at one individual business and 80% is coming from somewhere else and 20% of their revenues are derived offshore, then for that particular business it's actually very, very negative.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, certainly manufacturing, sort of imported value added from the rest of the world is probably a lot higher than for services. But for the UK export sector as a whole, it's still a sector that derives most of its value added in the UK and domestically.
The interesting thing is trying to forecast any of this with still 2 years after the triggering of Article 50 for a negotiated exit from the single market. And yet at this point, as I read the press, there is discussion within the cabinet that we may actually be prepared to pay billions of pounds for continued access to the single market. So when it comes to sort of pulling together these surveys, how useful in reality is a lot of the data?
Well, forecasting is always an inexact art at the best of times. As you say, it's particularly difficult at the moment because we don't really know how the future shape of the economy is going to evolve. We don't know whether we'll have a soft Brexit or a hard Brexit. We can really only go by the best guess at the moment. But as you say, every day is bringing forth new stories, new rumours. So the picture is constantly evolving.
And over the longer term, I mean, obviously there are going to be some benefits from leaving the single market if that's the way we go, in terms of perhaps being able to source at lower prices from other marketplaces. Net, what do you think the longer term story tells us about the UK's ability to be competitive even if we're locked out of the single market?
Well, as you said, there's certainly the opportunity to mitigate some of the costs of EU trade barriers. We can reduce or remove tariffs on imports from non-EU countries, and we can take advantage of cheaper food, cheaper manufactured goods in the rest of the world. We think there probably will be a net hit to the economy over the long term. It will really come down to what policies are pursued domestically. Will we have liberal policies towards migration, towards regulation, or will we not? And I think that will have a big bearing on the eventual outcome of Brexit.